Hi, I'm Keegan Matheson from MLB.com, and you're listening to Red, White, and Blue Jays.
Swing and a drive.
Welcome to Red, White, and Blue Jays, the podcast home of Blue Jays Fans UK, a group connecting Blue Jays fans around the UK and beyond, and telling their story. And now, here's the host of Red, White, and Blue Jays, Steve Hunter.
Hi guys, welcome to another episode of Red, White, and Blue Jays. Great to have you with us. Very excited about today's guest because we have a Blue Jays reporter and insider from MLB.com, Keegan Matheson. Great to have you with us, sir. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate your time. I know you're a busy guy, and I know we spoke. I think it might have been just in spring training. I can't remember when I first contacted you.
Yeah.
And I know you've been crazy busy schedule running around, but really appreciate that you've managed to carve out some time for us. So thank you so much for that. Just in terms of your backdrop, ever done anything into the UK? Is this a first for you?
This is it. Yeah, I like it. I normally get excited when I get to do anything that's east of me because I'm an East Coaster stuck in Toronto. So this is even further. So I love it. But this has got to be a first. Absolutely.
Excellent. Have you been to the UK at all? Is it somewhere that you know?
No.
Okay.
I have not been. I've wanted to make a trip. I have been under-traveled. You know, I have seen every downtown of every baseball city in North America and
yeah,
you know, eaten at every local, dive bar and this and that, but I need to do some proper vacation. So it's something I'm trying to do a better job at in my off seasons. You know, it's sometimes I think, man, I should have covered. Well, I hate hockey. I'm a terrible Canadian, number one. I should have covered basketball maybe, where the off season is in the summer. You know, my season ends in November, and my off season is the winter. So I've got to do a better job of getting out of here in the winter months. Yeah.
So you're born and raised in Halifax, is that right?
That's right. Born near Halifax, a town called New Glasgow. Grew up in Nova Scotia, a very small town. My folks live in an even smaller town now, but lived in Halifax in Nova Scotia, which for my dollar is the most incredible city in this country. I just love it. Right along the ocean in Nova Scotia. Went to university there, Dalhousie University for my undergrad. I bet I lived in Halifax, let's say 6-7 years.
Right.
Miss it dearly. Love that city. Halifax has been, I feel like the rest of Canada has discovered Halifax now. I go and I look at all of the $400 apartments I used to rent back in the glory days are now, Toronto style. But so everybody found out the secret that is Halifax, I guess, but that's good. It's a fantastic place. And moved here to Toronto 2016, I guess it would have been. I was kind of the kiss of death for a while. Once I showed up, the playoff runs ended. But, thankfully, they're back to it now. I was worried that I was bad luck for a few years there.
So you moved to Toronto to take up the job that you're doing, or did you move for other reasons?
That's right. It was along that line. Now, I did an undergraduate at Dalhousie in English and creative writing. So that's kind of in the direction of journalism, but not fully journalism. I moved to Toronto to attend Centennial College. It's a one-year program specifically for sports journalism, not general journalism, but for sports. It's a graduate program. And that is what I did in 2016. And that's launched me into, first with MLB.com, then a couple of detours, now back, home to MLB.com. It's, I finally have a ring on my finger with them, I think. But it's been interesting. I guess 5-6 years I've been here. And I hated it when I got here.
I really?
Absolutely hated Toronto. It was too big for me. I was very stubborn about it. In hindsight, if we want to unpack this, I was the problem. But I was stubborn. I did not learn the city whatsoever. I knew where the ballpark was and where my apartment was. But everything else I looked at and I said, no, it's just a big city, overwhelming. I'll never learn it. I've since come to absolutely love it. Part of that's time and patience. Another part of it is, one of the joys of this job is travel, getting to travel to other cities. And, as I go to the other 29 MLB cities, most of the time I land and I think, ooh, okay, Toronto's not that bad.
Sure.
It's been a great lesson on perspective, I guess, a lot of these road cities. So no, it's been a great experience here in Toronto. It's certainly fun to do what I do. It's something I love, very much. I grew up loving baseball above all other sports, and loving writing. It's not something that I can say was always a dream job, because I never thought of journalism when I was a kid. You know what teachers do, what doctors do, because you have teachers, you have a family doctor, you see how that works. I guess I had never seen what a journalist looks like. I saw the newspaper, but I didn't know how that job worked, how that process before a finished story worked or existed. But as I got further into writing and more interested in this, kind of getting into journalism properly has been, I think, a very good experience. And, happy to be here. Very happy to be where I'm at now.
It's a cool story. So, yeah, you just touched on growing up in terms of you always loved baseball. Was it something you played yourself, or when you're coming through high school and so on? It
was. Now, in Nova Scotia, where I grew up, and I guess this goes for most of Canada now, really, once you turn, it used to be, I'm 31 now. So when I was 12 or 13, that was the age where your best athletes in your town or your city started playing hockey all year long or through the summer. Now that probably starts at age 2. Hockey is just this brain disorder that this country has that I did not get at birth. But it's just not something I played it growing up. It's how I know most of my friends, but it's not for me. And baseball was, around where I'm from, there was some great baseball, because there's a lot of good country boys who are great at baseball. And when you go up to Cape Breton Island, there's some great baseball that gets played up there. And around where I'm from, there's lots of men's leagues that still play too, competitive men's leagues, not just beer league, slow pitch, which is really fun. That's one thing if I lived home, I wish I could be part of that.
Okay.
But definitely played a lot of baseball growing up. Will never claim to have been good. I was very good when I was very young, because I was a big kid before other kids got big. So It was, when the field was still small, I was the first kid to get big. There were lots of home runs, but then the field got bigger, the bases got further apart. Other parts of my game were exposed, let's say.
Okay.
But I was a DH from a young age, but always loved baseball. It was always my first love in sport.
Yeah. And I guess as you're growing up, in terms of geography, the Expos, / Blue Jays, did you have any sort of leaning towards either of those teams at that age?
Definitely grew up watching the Jays, but where I'm from, there was a lot of Red Sox. So in Nova Scotia, you would get the regional TV feeds from the New England area up the coast. Sure. So lots of Red Sox fans where I'm from, even to this day. Of course, tons of Blue Jays. People come out to those games constantly from the East Coast. I think even in Boston, there used to be a Maritimes night. My group of provinces in the East Coast is referred to as the Maritimes.
Yeah.
Even at Fenway Park, I think they used to have Maritimes night, where a lot of people would come down and go to those games. So you see a lot of that, but a lot of it has to do with regional TV coverage. You like the teams you see on TV when you're a kid. I'm a Green Bay Packers football fan because I saw them when I was 6 on TV, and I said I like those colors. It's not always a big, beautiful reason passed down through generations. My folks were not big baseball fans, but it was always on every night. The beauty of it, and I remember growing up, my argument with my mother would always be, I would be told to go to bed, and I would say, okay, let me watch the Blue Jays bat one more time. I had no interest in pitching. I did not understand the art of pitching yet. I wanted to see them bat. So it would always be the argument, all right, let me see them hit one more time, and I'd have to go to bed in the 2nd or 3rd inning. But I definitely grew up in front of a ball game every night.
Amazing. Earliest Blue Jays memory? What stands out for you? I'm just trying to think.
It's
in terms of your age.
There's a few stories that my mother tells. So I was born in 1990. So the 92 and 93 World Series, I don't remember. Okay. I'm told stories of how I was in front of the TVs. I remember some of my mother's early stories of me going to Blue Jays games. We used to come up here a lot. There's one she likes to tell that Roger Clemens was pitching that year, so it must have been 97. And so I was 6 years old, just about. And we go to the game, and I am decked out. I've got my, Blue Jays jersey and hat and shoelaces and everything on. And, now as a journalist, that makes me sweat and cringe. But, at the time I was a kid, I was a fan. And the way she tells the story, they went down 1-0. They were down 1-0 in the first or second inning. And I was upset. I wanted to leave. I was throwing a tantrum. Eventually they came back and won the game. But that's, thankfully I've calmed down at ball games now. And then I remember when I was really young, I don't have kids, so I'm trying to remember what age you lose teeth at. I'm kind of blurry on the age, but I lost my first tooth at Sky Dome eating an ice cream sundae or something like this. Then a few months later, we were back, and I lost my second tooth of my life eating a burger at the Sky Dome. So in my mind, when I was 3 or 4, however old you are at that point, in my mind, there was something magical about this building where I thought, oh my God, we're going to have to come here for me to lose all of my teeth. It was, I thought the next time we went back, I remember thinking I was a little nervous to eat something. But so those are really stories that just end up with a young Keegan Matheson crying at a ballpark. Thankfully, I'm a little more stable now. But we went to a ton of Jays games as a kid and a ton of Red Sox games down at Fenway Park too. Yeah.
And in terms of Rogers Centre, just as you talking about that, the renovations, are you suspecting there's going to be a couple of teeth sort of buried in the concrete somewhere as they to carry out the renovation? Fenway, what do you think of Fenway as a ballpark? I mean, obviously, very, very different to Sky Dome, straight Rogers Centre.
I view ballparks so differently now, and my friends, will argue about it. So the example I always use is Tropicana Field. Terrible ballpark, an abomination of a sports stadium.
Yep.
But for my purposes now, media parking is easy. There's an elevator up to the press box, incredible press box, good press box snacks. So I'm there thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. Plus, I'm in Tampa and it's air conditioned. I think this is as good as it gets.
Okay.
Fenway Park, when I was a kid growing up, was, the mystique and the history of it blew me away. I would get emotional going there when I was a kid as a baseball fan. And my dad and I would go on the tour every time. It was amazing. Now I go in there and I think, ugh. It's, having history sometimes just means you're really, really old. And I appreciate that history. I do. But that's the first 2 minutes of me arriving. Then the next 10 hours of my day are thinking, you know what, I could go for the odd modern amenity here at Fenway Park. But it's one of those places that you do have to go to once. You have to experience it. It's an incredible place. And I do wish that more ballparks, good Lord, speaking of Rogers Centre, I wish more ballparks would do a better job of using the space around the stadium. And it depends on what teams own around the stadium, the property that belongs to them. But statues, having some history outside that lets you know what's in that big concrete hunk. So I think that the area around Fenway Park is pretty cool. I like seeing that. And it's also given me an appreciation for any ballpark that is actually in the city.
Yeah.
I think of going to Kansas City earlier this year, and I'm driving out to the middle of nowhere. Nobody's walking there. It's not accessible. It doesn't feel like it's part of Kansas City. It's just on a highway. Who cares? Yeah. But the fact that you can look out of Rogers Centre here and see the CN Tower, or the fact that I can just walk from my hotel, through these famous streets of Boston and arrive at Fenway Park, that's cool. I care about location a lot. But Fenway itself, it's, the story I always tell, this was 2 or 3 years ago, of the moment that I got on the elevator alone and a rat the size of my foot got on with me. And I have big feet. So it's, one of those places. You have some unwelcome guests from time to time.
Yeah. I enjoyed our time at Fenway. I think probably, like you've mentioned, in terms of, the history and stuff, it was an easy access for us when we did one of our trips out to Toronto. And it was interesting taking our kids both to Rogers Centre and then on to Fenway, and there was a massive rain delay at Boston.
Okay.
And so they experienced all of that, but it just made me appreciate how important the roof is, particularly in the geography of that sort of northeast corner of the States, and then obviously into Canada.
I'm so spoiled by that, and I you don't realize it now, but when I started traveling again fully this year, we'll be in a road city and a rain delay will happen. And the local writers, of course, they're not cheering, but they'll say, well, this is how it goes. And I'm thinking, what the hell do you mean? Like, this is unacceptable. Like, we have the technology to have a roof on this place. So I think every stadium ever built should have a retractable roof. It makes such a difference in my life. It probably shaves 50, 60, 70 hours off my season waiting for rain delays every year. So that is why, Rogers Center, I will never tell anybody it's beautiful, ever. But man, with that roof, it's immediately in my good books.
Yeah, absolutely. And it does hold lots of good memories for lots of people.
Yeah.
And I think, thinking back obviously to the World Series, but other stuff, in terms of the 2015-16 seasons, I think I started watching the Jays in 94. So my first visit was just after the World Series. So I missed those. But the sort of 15-16 seasons, for me as a fan watching in, the place was pumping, wasn't it? I mean, it's just, great place to watch baseball.
Yeah, that's what Toronto does well. And part of that's the geography. Because if this stadium is out in the middle of nowhere, you're not getting the walk-up crowd. You're not getting a lot of the downtown crowd, which, at least for Toronto's demographic, is a lot of the younger people in the city, kind of the age 25 to 40 demographic who have not yet gone to the suburbs, who are going to make it a destination. We saw that with the Toronto Raptors too. And with the Blue Jays in 15 and 16, it becomes the cool spot to be. And that sounds silly and flimsy, but there's a lot of money to be made off being the cool thing in town.
Sure.
And the Raptors absolutely blew up in 2019 because of that. The Blue Jays in 15 and 16, it's all anybody talked about. Anywhere you went, people were wearing Blue Jays gear on the streets to work through that playoff run. The entire city quite literally revolves around that downtown. It's right where Union Station is, which was the main transportation hub of the city.
Yep.
It's right there. So when the Blue Jays are good, this city completely falls for the team. When they're bad, you can forget about it. But it's a good city for that. And man, it really becomes a social destination just as much as a ball game.
Yeah, very good. Okay, well, as we're sort of leaning into the Jays, let's have a little chat in terms of where we are. Just as a sort of opening question, what would your summary be of today in terms of the season as it's gone thus far? How would you summarize the Jays' performance?
It makes me realize that I shouldn't waste time writing previews every year in February and March. Yeah. We spend so much time previewing everything because, people need something to read. We need something to do. It's usually a waste of time. It's usually way off. And most things you would have predicted about this Blue Jays team have not happened. The lineup at times has been pretty inconsistent. There was that stretch early in the season where they had no idea how to hit with runners in scoring position. It was a frustrating team for a while because even though their numbers were good, even though they were a top 5 offense for that whole stretch, they still annoyed the hell out of you because they would leave 10 men on base every game. The numbers were good because they were getting on base, but nothing else was happening. And then in terms of the rotation, I mean, you could have bet me any number that Jose Berrios would have done this season. I never would have taken it. Yeah. I would have bet my house that he would be a 3.6 ERA like he always is. He's the most consistent pitcher in Major League Baseball for 5 years. And all of a sudden, he's the least consistent in the Blue Jays rotation. How does that happen? Where does that come from? Especially in year one of a big, expensive deal. You don't expect that. But at the same time, there have been good stories on the other side. Alejandro Kirk playing like he has. Santiago Espinal early in the season. Alek Manoah continues to exceed expectations. Has been just brilliant, for this team. And Kevin Gausman has been even better than I thought. He has been almost underrated up to this point. He has had 0 batted ball luck. And I don't get into batted ball luck because it balances out eventually. His hasn't. Like, he has gotten screwed by batted ball luck, and he's still been an elite pitcher. So I don't think we even appreciate how good he has been. It's been this weird balance this season. They get out to whatever their record is now. It's rarely looked like that. They've either looked like the best team in baseball or like a team that's going to stumble out of the playoff race at this point. So we'll see where it goes from here, but nothing has been consistent. Nothing at all.
And do you think part of that was the decision in terms of Charlie going, that sort of inconsistency to the performances?
Yeah, inconsistency will get somebody fired, and because that's always going to lead to a stretch like they had, that 1-6 West Coast road trip, 1-9 stretch around that point. So they have been playing better baseball since John Schneider took over, more aggressive baseball too. And I like that. That fits this team because the Blue Jays, like for example, right now playing the Baltimore Orioles, they are a better team, period, easily. But unless you bring the game to the other team's doorstep, you're leaving the door open. And too often the Blue Jays were just involved or participating in games against lesser teams instead of just saying, hey, we're better. We're going to play this game our way and see if you can keep up. And I think it's a more natural fit for them, being the aggressor. And it's a more natural fit for their energy. And that's part of a manager's job. If he looked around and saw a locker room full of surly, age 37 Jose Bautista types, okay, you read the energy a bit different.
Sure.
But when you look around that clubhouse, and this isn't just in the dugouts. I mean, when I'm in there at 4:00 in the afternoon pregame, they are dancing and partying and yelling at each other. And this is the most energetic team you could be part of. So might as well do something with that. And I think John Schneider has captured that well, captured that youthful vibe that this team has, and we'll see where it goes. An aggressive brand of baseball makes it even even less consistent because you're introducing more variables, more chaos. But
of course,
that's why you tune in every night. You don't know if they're going to look like a World Series winner or absolutely stink the place up. It's must-see TV for one reason or the other. I don't know.
Absolutely, and I think that's what people were excited about at the beginning of the season in terms of so much power across the batting lineup, and I think we got a flavour certainly as the season ran out last year, going through particularly into September. August, I think from memory, was not great last year, but September the Jays picked up massively. Obviously, a very competitive end to the season, the home run jacket and all the partying that goes on with that. So there was this sort of momentum, I think, coming into 2022 of this very aggressive team, and it, as you said, it didn't quite happen under Charlie's reign. And I think, with John Schneider now seeing that come through, I think is exciting again to believe that things are happening. I think the base running might be a bit questionable just after the last few games. What are you making of those sort of decisions? And I guess that's really a lot down to the player at that moment deciding whether he's going to go or not, despite what, base coaches are saying.
Yeah, that needs to be ironed out. It's in even at this point of the year, it's high stakes. Now, if it's early July or late June and somebody screws up on the bases, it's easy for a manager or even for me covering to say, you know what, an aggressive play, maybe it works out next time. Sure.
Yeah.
If we are watching a game on October 5th and like we see so many times, a ball is thrown to a base and Lourdes Gurriel Jr. is still 7 steps away from that base, you're thinking, woof, that's the ball game. That might be the series. So they've got to figure that out along the way. And they will. It's a lot depending on the runner. Now, if you are Whit Merrifield or someone like George Springer, Santiago Espinal makes good decisions on the bases, you trust them, you normally feel good with it. There have been times where guys like Vladdy or Lourdes will start to run, and even before there's a play, I'm in the press box thinking, oh, man, that's not going to work. And you see where the energy is coming from. And, I think John Schneider is the right guy to manage that, especially going back to his minor league days. You learn how to manage players and their aggression, number one, but you've got to make it work. If aggression works, you look like a genius. If it does not, you look like you're trying too hard, which does not work in baseball ever. So I think that's going to be a major factor for the Blue Jays. Leave it up to the guys who can do it. We saw that with Whit Merrifield in Minneapolis when he pretty much won that game all by himself, tagging up to go to third, tagging up to go home. But it's got to be the right guy. As fun as it is to watch Vladdy run the bases, it's a lot more fun when it works.
Yeah, no, absolutely. A couple of nights ago, fairly controversial call running into home plate. Where did you land in terms of right call, wrong call? I mean, obviously, it was great from the Jays' perspective, but I think if it had been flipped around the other way, we would have been as upset. So where did you feel the umps got it right or not?
I think it all happened correctly as it played out. Now, when he was called out live on the play, I thought, sure. And that is a rule that, the blocking the plate rule is one that I still struggle to understand at all at this point. So when the play was made, I'm watching the replay and thinking, you know what? He's blocking a little bit, but it's still a very nice tag. If he's allowed to block, it's a nice block. What the hell does block mean anymore? But when it was reviewed and when you read the rule, overturning it also made sense. So I'm glad that's in place. And then after the game, I also see where Rocco Baldelli is coming from, because there's so many times where that's not overturned. My stance was that regardless of how it was called on the field, I kind of thought it would stay that way because it was close.
Yeah.
But overturning it does fit the letter of the rule. It's just not a rule that we see called all the time. It's like if you saw an umpire award an automatic strike because a hitter was stepping out of the box for too long. That's a rule, but you're thinking, well, what the hell? I haven't seen that in months.
Yeah.
So you're exactly right. I think that if this was called against the Blue Jays, nobody would be tweeting me saying, well, that's the rule. That's how it's written. I wouldn't be getting 10,000 screenshots of the overhead view of home plate with lines drawn on Microsoft Paint. It's, fandom creates bias, but and that's completely okay. But I don't think a lot of people realize that in the moment. So it's, I think I tweeted out that the Blue Jays did get a bit of a break and people didn't like that. But, to that I said, if it happened to the Blue Jays, you might agree. But so it all depends what side you're on. But and Blue Jays fans, if they love one thing, it is umpiring. But
oh yes,
my God. But it ended up correct. I think a few people learned a rule, and I actually woke up this morning and I still saw people arguing about it in my mentions. And I said, okay, I retire. I'm done with home plate.
Well, we come from a nation of football fans for the Premier League, and if there's anything more controversial in Premier League football, it's the VAR decisions in terms of offside. And it's exactly the same thing. Is it's lines across the pitch, and it's an elbow over the line, and it's technically it's the right answer, but it's one of those, isn't it? I think there's technology does help, but I think if it gets to the point where it starts to take away the joy of the game in its original form. I mean, where would you be on Roboumps? Do you think? I mean, they seem like they are likely to be coming.
I'm for robot umpires. I think the problem for most people is that they think an actual robot will be behind home plate. It's not how it's going to work. I think people are visually having a problem with it. All it's going to be is an umpire with an earpiece.
Yeah.
And I think that makes a ton of sense. As long as this strike zone is not, drastically varying from what pitchers have been used to. I hope it's a gentle progression. But when a lot of people hear robot umpires, I think they're picturing no umpire at all, just a voice of God up from the booth saying ball one. And that's not going to be it. There's still going to be an umpire. Your visual will remain the same. It'll just be more accurate. In other areas of the game, I don't want to get too nitpicky with video review because time of play, my goodness. But also, baseball has been a sport that hasn't really changed much over the years. This is not like the NFL where you have to learn what the rules are every season. Baseball, you can go to a game in 1907 and you'll know what's happening. So I don't want to bog it down too much with replay and technology, but I think an umpire wearing an earpiece to get an accurate ball or strike call, which will happen just as quickly, I think that makes a lot of sense. And it will save me from getting screenshots of the game day strike zone, most importantly.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, let's just rewind to last week in terms of trade deadline. How did you feel that went? Did the Jays, I think most people would say they did perhaps what they needed to do, but it wasn't spectacular.
It was okay. It was fine, and it's in a middle ground type of thing. Yeah. In the bullpen, adding Zach Pop and Anthony Bass, that's good. Sure, you're upgrading from a Trevor Richards or a Trent Thornton or whoever that last guy in the bullpen is, but are you changing your playoff odds or are you changing your World Series odds? Are those players going to be the guys who make a difference in the 8th inning of Game 3 of the ALCS? No. That's okay. You're a better team, but I think the Blue Jays needed that big, high strikeout reliever because having Jordan Romano, that's great, but postseason winning teams, World Series teams, have multiple closers, have a super bullpen on the back. And the Blue Jays are more of a depth bullpen right now. There was also room to upgrade that rotation. Mitch White fits what they do as a kind of Ross Stripling 2.0 with team control. It fits the Blue Jays identity. But that's more of a broader baseball move. You like to have that piece on your team, but again, not really increasing the World Series odds. Whit Merrifield, what we've seen from him so far, he does change this lineup. You can picture him in a big spot, maybe coming off of the bench or having a big moment in the bases in the 8th or 9th inning, running in a big game. You can see that. You can see him tipping a game potentially. But when you look around the league at what the Yankees did, at how good the Dodgers are, what the Astros did, look at the Padres adding Soto, there's a lot of things. If you're going to talk about the trade deadline, you're going to be 10 storylines down before you mention the Blue Jays, which is probably not the most encouraging thing.
No, I would have thought in terms of the other teams, they wouldn't have looked at the Jays in terms of, well, they've done some good business there. I think everybody else is looking around and seeing the teams that you've mentioned in terms of their trade. So what does that say to you about, I think we're all taking it as read that they will make the postseason. I mean, I think just because of expansion and so on. But what does that say in terms of once we get there? I mean, do you feel there's an appetite to actually really push through?
It's for the Blue Jays in their window now. For example, if they had have had this deadline in 2016, massive failure, complete miss, because that was an old team that everybody knew, even though we didn't want to admit it at the time, everyone knew was about to fall apart because of payroll, because of age. It just wasn't going to last. And that's okay. I love teams that go for it. But now you're looking at a team with a window probably of the next 4 or 5 years. There is something to be said about just getting in. Look at Atlanta last year. I think they had the worst record of any postseason team. They win. So there's something to be said about giving yourself 4 or 5 chances instead of just one big one, because we see how often the best team does not win. It's not the most exciting strategy to tell fans, but at this point, I think you're seeing that's what the Blue Jays are doing. They are a postseason team. A lot of their improvements will still come from within, whether that's Bo Bichette, who's looked good recently, Vladdy, Jose Barrios improving. There's room for major improvements internally. But I think right now, they're looking like a team that will go to the playoffs every year, definitely. But it's more about getting hot at the right time. And I think a lot of teams will point to that Atlanta run as that. Just get in and see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's exactly it, isn't it? You want to see, you just want to get across the line. And I think if the Jays had got in last year, I think they would have had a very good chance of progressing through. I think everybody felt that. And that was, I think, the enormity, the disappointment of what happened last season. Yeah. Whereas I think at the moment, as things stand, I think they'll get across the line, but I'm not massively excited about the chances. I mean, I think the Yankees, even the Yankees are faltering a little bit at the moment. So, 4-game series against the Yankees, 5-game series, 7-game series. Could they do that? Are they strong enough to push through? I think, as you say, it's all about getting hot at the right point of the season. Does that change how baseball's, the mindset of baseball? Is it now all about just getting across the line? Doesn't matter really how you perform through the regular season. Is it just we just need to be in the postseason and then we change tack?
Yeah, you'll see that more with how teams manage players and especially pitchers. Making sure they are ready to ramp up. You'll probably see that with Alek Manoah. If he's going to throw maybe over 200 innings, but do you want him to have a day off or a trip through the rotation off maybe at one point to keep him fresh? Because as long as you're going to get in, get in. If it's looking close, of course, go all out, make it happen. But a team down the stretch, especially with those 3 wild card spots, it's likely that in the last weeks of September, you're going to know who is falling where. Maybe that 3rd spot is a little more up for contention, but it's about peaking them. And especially if you are a team that might be an underdog in a series, if you are playing the Yankees or somebody like that, you need to steal a game. Normally that is just one player having one big performance, and normally that means a starting pitcher. So if you can rest your ace, line up your guy, if that's Kevin Gausman for the Blue Jays, line him up for a game 1. I don't care if you're playing the Dodgers. If you steal a game, all of a sudden you're the favorite, 1-0. So I think a lot of it will be about lining up, these next few weeks.
Yeah. In terms of injuries, obviously some key guys just gone onto the IL. So George Springer, Stripling, and Tim Mazur with his dislocation the other day.
Yeah.
That was terrible. I dislocated my shoulder when I was 19, so I totally felt for him. It's a horrible, horrible thing. How key is it to get those guys back up and healthy running towards October?
Yeah, Springer especially. They don't think he'll need more than the 10 days, but at the same time, I've heard that 100 times before, and the guy has needed more. So we'll see. Having Springer in there healthy and not grimacing on the camera every inning is important because he did not look right. It was uncomfortable to watch him, and we've seen that a few times. So having him at the top of the lineup, he is a rare player. He is an incredible baseball player. To have in the leadoff spot is unique for this team, so they need that. Having Stripling, his talent is also just as important as the option to get Yusei Kikuchi out of that rotation. I mean, you need a healthy starter. And at this point, Kikuchi, I don't know how patient you can be, really. Now that you have Mitch White as another option there, having one of them in the bullpen would be nice to have some length. But Kikuchi pitching every 5th day for a team that's very much in a race. They're not running away with this spot. They're in a race. I don't know how that works. I know he has the odd start where he looks good, but then the opposing team watches that start, adjusts immediately, and rocks him the next start out. So that's why whenever he comes back from the IL or from a big adjustment and looks good once, it's not that I don't care, but show me 3 or 4 times because it's happening over and over again where he'll get hit again immediately and he's on to the next adjustment. Yeah. That's hard to do when you are facing Aaron Judge. Good luck. So Stripling being back is very important. And then Mesa, God, you need a lefty at some point. And I know that Major League Baseball is not as traditional righty-lefty matchups as it used to be, but Mesa's just playing good. He has been a rock for this bullpen. He's very well liked in the clubhouse. He's kind of like the dad of the group. But Mesa's a fantastic individual, a really good pitcher, and a great story coming back from that Tommy John. So I'm glad that it was, when I say just a dislocation, I mean nothing broken or torn because you're worried about rotator cuffs and stuff like that. He can come back and pitch this year, which is good news. But when he was laying on the ground there for a minute, that was as scary as this season has looked because he's a guy who's been through a big one before. Yeah.
And would you want your pitcher doing what he did? I mean, he clearly was trying to obviously get the tag out running into home plate. Is that where you want to see one of your key players,
I still think you do. I think it's hard to tell these guys not to because instinct takes over. It's a big game at the plate. And if he pulls up there or tries to scoop in a situation where he could have tagged, I think fans and even teammates would look at that and think, come on, It's so often this is when injuries come up, is when a player is doing something they're not used to, a motion that their muscle memory and their body is not used to. That's why you see pitchers injured so much when there's a play at the base or the play at home plate like this. Just not something they're used to doing. So they're stepping awkwardly, they're angling their bodies awkwardly. And it's unfortunate it happened, but I still think you want to see a pitcher go for it. I guess this is a lesson on how it can go wrong, of course, but I'm guessing if Mesa gets a dribbler back, he'll be diving at that guy again.
Yeah. It's, as you say, it's inbuilt into them, isn't it? It's just natural reaction to what's happening around them. Jackie Bradley Jr., what's he going to bring to the Jays?
He'll be Bradley Zimmer with maybe a few more balls put in play at this point. You can
That's not a high bar.
Yeah, it's a bit of a low bar, but I think at this point you can compare their defensive numbers this year and their sprint numbers this year, yada, yada, yada. But over a career, I think I trust Jackie Bradley Jr. more in that outfield.
Sure.
Based off his experience, the moments he's had in big games, his arm, if anything, defensively, it's a tie. It's close enough.
Yeah.
But we have seen Bradley Zimmer on this roster for a long time, hitting nothing, hitting 100, essentially. And for a team like this that needs to utilize their bench well, that just doesn't work. That's not going to last on this roster. So even if Jackie Bradley Jr. can have the odd at-bat where he's, genuinely just putting a ball in play, giving himself a chance, that's enough of an upgrade. And having some experience as well helps. By all accounts, a great guy to have in the clubhouse. So is also another one the Blue Jays have liked for a long time. They tend to not give up on these guys that they've liked. Gosman's another example of that. And finally get him, not at his peak value by any means, but I think he's a minor upgrade.
Very good. Keegan, I'm conscious of time, so I want to make sure that I just get a couple of questions that the guys sent in before we let you go. Probably the biggest one that I guess still is being banded around a lot is in terms of Mark Shapiro and Ross Atkins' performance, and obviously coming out of the trade deadline, I guess, is connected to that. How do you feel that they are being received amongst the Toronto faithful?
Much better than it used to be, for sure. The trade deadline soured some people, of course, briefly, but I think leading into that and some of the moves that have been made, I think Blue Jays fans have finally gotten away from being upset that, two Americans from Cleveland came in to run the organization. That was always stupid, but it takes people a while to get over it. I get that. But I think the reception has been better. This trade deadline was not people's favorite thing, of course, by any means. But right now, I think you see a team that's in a place most other teams dream of being in. And I say that carefully, but from a big picture, you have your young core, you have rebuilt slowly, you have money to spend, you have some top prospects still to trade if you need to, and you have supplemented that young core with big money free agents or signings, trades. Berrios, Gosman, Ryu was an early one, George Springer. So we've seen teams try to rebuild and not get here. We say rebuild like it's easy, like you just suck it up for 3 or 4 years. Most teams do not get to this point. So the Blue Jays are where they've told us they were going for a while. And I think that's a legitimate accomplishment. But going from here to being great is the hard part. Is finding a way to go from 91 wins to 95. That's the hard part. Finding a way to be a team that's not just good in the regular season, but can really tighten up and win close, mistake-free games when all of the pressure in the world is on them in October. That's different. That's much different. So we're going to see that line now. And frankly, I don't know. We'll see. You don't know until every single out is the biggest out of the season, how a team or how a person, an individual, will hold up to that. But I think in terms of big picture, this is where they said they wanted to get. It's an accomplishment to get here, but I think the hard part comes now because you don't have the benefit of patience anymore.
Sure.
And it's all about winning. Not just winning, but World Series winning. I think in Toronto, and this is another thing I want to say carefully, but it's other sports markets are a little harsher when it comes to demanding championships and excellence. You'll get the polite boos in Toronto, but you won't get the Boston boos or the New York style boos. So I think that this is a team that needs to be World Series or bust. They're good enough.
Yeah.
They are good enough to have that expectation every year. It's no longer about making the playoffs and having fun and seeing what happens. It's about having fun, of course. It's a silly sport, but it's World Series expectations. It has to be.
Very good. Question from Mark, just about the catching position in terms of trades. So 3 good catches in the team: Danny Jansen, Alejandro Kirk, and Gabriel Moreno, of course, back down in AAA at the moment. How do you see that position playing out?
That's going to be an interesting one this offseason because going into next year, Gabby Moreno can just be considered a big leaguer. You're not talking about his arrival or anything like that. Jansen, since his hot start, has not been good at the plate. The power numbers have not been there. But at the same time, Jansen is a player and a person that this organization loves. He has come up in this organization. He is so good working with the pitchers and managing a pitching staff. Is such a talent of his. I think he makes a lot of sense as a 1B, like a power hitting 1B in a 1A, 1B situation. Right now, that makes a lot of sense with Alejandro Kirk, but Gabriel Moreno is an incredible talent, an incredible young player, and one that you don't see come around at catcher very often. So I think this offseason is when you see the Blue Jays open to dealing one of those. Obviously, there's going to be far more interest in either young guy, but really, if you had a duo of Moreno and Kirk, that's pretty attractive. You have Kirk able to DH. If there's a partner you can find for Jansen, and upgrade elsewhere. But at the same time, and I'm guilty of this certainly, we definitely play video game GM a lot of the time. Sure. It's going to happen like it did this year, where somebody will get hurt. They will hit a cold stretch. Yep. And it's easy to look at this and say, okay, the Blue Jays need a starter. Let's turn Moreno into an ace starter. Now you have a perfect team. Well, the next week, Alejandro Kirk strains his hamstring and you don't have any catchers. So it's tough. And I think the Blue Jays are in a position of power because teams do not have catching. Nobody has catching right now in Major League Baseball. So they are holding not just talented players, but talented players at the rarest position to have talent. So they are in full control. They can do whatever they want with this, but they've got to be careful because if you deal the wrong one, if you deal James Shields for Fernando Tatis Jr. and you have to wake up every year hating yourself for a decade,
totally.
You got to be sure you do the right one. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it was, at the beginning of the season when Jansen went out and suddenly Kirk is having to do a lot of game coverage, and you can suddenly see how what seems to be a very luxurious position suddenly overnight turned to famine, which is something I guess the guys are having to think about. Okay, a couple of fun questions from Elizabeth for you. Here we go. So between you and Alejandro Kirk, which who would get to first base the quickest?
I am going to take myself, not because I'm athletic, but because what am I, 6'2" or 3"? I think I have a bit of a stride advantage on Alejandro Kirk.
Yeah.
He is more of the quick steps. I know I'm putting myself at risk here saying I would beat a pro athlete to first base, but maybe we can arrange for a race next spring training in Dunedin. I'll train this offseason.
Totally. Absolutely. I think we should line that one up. Okay, so Looney hot dog night at Rogers Centre. Who's going to eat more, you or Alek Manoah?
Manoah. I can't even lie about this. I'm tall. I'm broadly built, and Alek Manoah is one of the few baseball players I've ever met who is both taller and wider than me. It is it's unbelievable. Whatever he's listed at is wrong. Increase what he is listed at. He is a massive human being. So it's extremely rare that I feel small in a major league clubhouse. But Manoah, when he walked up, we were in Minneapolis or wherever it was, he was walking by and he just clamped his hand on my back. And I felt like the wind had been knocked out of me. He is, he would put me down. I think he would be able to put down a terrifying number of loony dogs in a game.
Yeah. And what I like about Manoah, he stands his ground, doesn't he? He takes no messing. He's quite happy to, give as good as he gets, which, considering he's so relatively new into Major League, he's happy to do that. Okay, what about this one? Who could strike out more batters in 4 innings, yourself or Kokichu?
I might hit the strike zone more. I think that he would have the velocity upside on me, so I think he gets a few more Ks.
Yeah.
But you know what? Given how hittable I would be, I think I give up fewer walks.
Okay. Yes, that's an interesting one.
I'd give up 20 runs, but none of it would be self-inflicted. I would make them earn it.
Yeah, very good. This last one was from Daniel. Who would hit the ball further, you or Bradley Zimmer?
Well, step one is hitting the ball.
Yeah.
which might be, you know, which one of us is going to do that. When Zimmer gets a hold of it, I remember that one home run he hit at Rogers Center. Was that in the second deck to right field? When he gets a hold of it, man, it goes. The problem is the word when. Yeah. That's why we find ourselves where we are. You see that talent in there, but man, it's been difficult to watch.
I think as a fan, you know, watching in, and yeah, you can be very easy an armchair critic, can't you? And it just all looks so very straightforward. And then you see it actually up close and personal. And yeah, what do they say? It's hitting a baseball is one of the hardest things to do in sport. I think, you know, you have an appreciation of these guys who do it day in, day out and perform at the highest level. Keegan, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate talking to you, for all your insight, and just taking, you know, these questions at the end as well. Really grateful for that. Thank you so much. What does the rest of your season look like for you? Many travels around? Are you literally traveling on? Well, obviously you're not in Baltimore at the moment, but do you travel to most away ballparks?
Yeah, from here on out, it'll be most of the road games. I think the Blue Jays are back here in Toronto Friday, 2 days from now, so I'll be at the stadium with them then. Then the next road trip I've been looking forward to, because it is New York and then Boston, which means that I can take the train in between those two cities. A, I hate airlines and I hate airports. B, I'm a huge nerd for the train. So any road series where I can do that, I'm excited.
I've done that train journey. Yeah, I've done that train journey between the two. Yeah,
I'll be in Pittsburgh early September. I think Texas coming up soon after that. There'll be lots of exciting new places for me to complain about being too hot. But it's anywhere the Blue Jays are. I think the rest of the season I'll be along for the ride. It should be a good one.
Yeah, brilliant. Well, thank you so much for your time, and we'll look forward to chatting to you perhaps at some point in the future.
Definitely. Thank you. Enjoyed it.
The Red, White, and Blue Jays podcast is a production of Blue Jays Fans UK. If you've got a Blue Jays story to share, let us know. Email us at bluejaysfansuk@gmail.com. And follow along on Twitter and Instagram at Blue Jays Fans UK. I'm your announcer, Jim Langton. Thanks for listening.